Recent years, concerns about genetic privacy have reached new heights. The idea that our most personal biological data could be accessed or misused by powerful organizations is no longer just a plot for science fiction. With the FBI's growing interest in genetic genealogy and the increasing use of public DNA databases, many are beginning to question just how safe their genetic information really is. This video will take you through the unfolding reality of DNA surveillance, the legal and ethical battles it has sparked, and the chilling possibilities that lie ahead. Let's begin by exploring how the FBI is leveraging genetic genealogy to solve crimes and why that has everyone talking. FBI doesn't have direct access to private DNA databases like 23andMe, but that hasn't stopped them from using genetic genealogy to track down suspects. By tapping into smaller third-party databases where users have opted in to share their data, investigators can find distant relatives of persons of interest. Even if someone has never taken a DNA test, their family connections can still lead law enforcement right to their door. This approach has already played a role in high-profile investigations, demonstrating both its power and its potential to erode personal privacy. Family matching is a powerful tool in the hands of investigators. By identifying distant relatives in public databases, law enforcement can build family trees that eventually point to a suspect, even if that person never submitted their own DNA. This means your genetic privacy isn't just about your choices, but also the choices of your relatives. The implications are profound. A single family member's decision to share their data can inadvertently expose an entire lineage to scrutiny. This interconnectedness is both a marvel of modern science and a source of growing anxiety. One of the most notable examples of genetic genealogy in action is the Nancy Guthrie case. In February 2026, the FBI announced that they had used these techniques in a high-profile investigation, drawing national attention to the practice. The case highlighted how genetic data, when combined with traditional detective work, can break open even the toughest mysteries, but it also raised urgent questions about consent, oversight, and the potential for abuse. As more cases like this come to light, the debate over genetic privacy only grows more heated. March 2025, 23andMe, one of the largest consumer DNA testing companies, filed for bankruptcy. This event sent shockwaves through the industry and its millions of customers. Suddenly, the company's vast database, containing the genetic information of over 15 million people, became a corporate asset up for grabs. The prospect of this data being sold to the highest bidder, potentially without customer consent, ignited a fierce legal and ethical battle. The future of genetic privacy seemed more uncertain than ever. As news of 23andMe's bankruptcy spread, 27 states and the District of Columbia quickly filed lawsuits to block the sale of customer DNA data. Their argument was simple: people never consented to have their most personal information treated as a commodity. Legal experts warned that bankruptcy law could override previous privacy promises, allowing new owners to change the terms of service and potentially exploit the data in ways customers never imagined. The outcome of these lawsuits will set a precedent for the entire industry. Bankruptcy law is designed to protect creditors, not consumers. When a company like 23andMe goes under, its assets, including its massive DNA database, can be sold to pay off debts. This creates a dangerous loophole. Privacy agreements made with customers may be swept aside in the process. Legal scholars warn that new owners could rewrite the rules, potentially exposing millions of people to new risks. It's a stark reminder that the fine print in user agreements can have life-changing consequences. For the bankruptcy, 23andMe had already faced a major crisis. A data breach in 2023 compromised the genetic information of nearly 7 million users. The fallout was immediate and severe, with a class action lawsuit resulting in a settlement between $30 million and $50 million. For many affected users, the deadline to file a claim was set for February 2026. This breach underscored just how vulnerable even the most sophisticated databases can be, and how high the stakes are when it comes to genetic privacy. Despite these crises, 23andMe has maintained a firm public stance. According to their transparency reports, they require a valid search warrant or court order before releasing any individual data. The company claims to have resisted all law enforcement requests to date, insisting that no user data has been voluntarily handed over to police. While this offers some reassurance, critics argue that legal and technological loopholes still leave customers exposed. If you're worried about whether your information was involved in the 2023 breach, 23andMe has set up a security update page where users can check their status. This move is part of a broader effort to restore trust and transparency. However, for many, the damage has already been done. The breach serves as a stark warning about the risks of entrusting sensitive data to any organization, no matter how reputable. For those seeking greater control, 23andMe offers instructions on how to request the deletion of your DNA data from their servers. This process is designed to give users a sense of agency in an increasingly uncertain landscape. However, with the company's future in flux, some worry that deletion requests may not be honored if ownership changes hands. The best defense, many argue, is to stay informed and proactive. Beyond consumer DNA companies, there are growing fears that hospitals may be quietly turning over leftover blood samples to government agencies. Rumors of secret programs involving the FBI and CIA have fueled public paranoia. While these claims are difficult to verify, they tap into a deep-seated anxiety about the loss of biological autonomy. The idea that routine medical procedures could be used for surveillance is both chilling and plausible in today's high-tech world. The premise of a secret government program collecting DNA from hospitals sounds like the plot of a techno-thriller. Yet real-world developments have made this scenario increasingly believable. By scaling up the loss of biological autonomy into a global conspiracy, storytellers can tap into immediate visceral fears. The line between fiction and reality is blurring, making it harder than ever to distinguish between the two. Imagine a world where every COVID-19 test was secretly uploading genomic metadata to a classified government database. This concept, dubbed the biodigital surveillance state, takes real-world anxieties and pushes them to the extreme. In this scenario, the pandemic becomes the perfect cover for mass data collection, blurring the lines between public health and surveillance. It's a chilling vision that feels all too possible in an era of rapid technological advancement. One of the most controversial aspects of modern genetic surveillance is the residual sample loophole. Hospitals routinely collect blood and tissue samples for medical testing, but what happens to the leftovers? In some cases, these biospecimens are stored and later used for research, or potentially for law enforcement purposes. The ethical debate over secondary use of biospecimens is ongoing, with privacy advocates warning that patients often have little say in how their samples are used. Fictional twist on real-world law could see the government classifying DNA as information rather than physical property. This would allow agencies to seize genetic material from hospital labs without a warrant, bypassing traditional legal safeguards. Such a move would represent a dramatic expansion of state power, raising profound questions about consent, ownership, and the very nature of personal identity. Using the healthcare system as a DNA dragnet to track undocumented individuals adds a layer of political tension to the surveillance debate. Hospitals, once seen as places of healing, become instruments of state control. This transformation is a classic dystopian trope, turning everyday institutions into tools of oppression. The implications for civil liberties and trust in public health are enormous. Speculative fiction, the idea that a virus could serve as a delivery system for mass DNA collection is both provocative and unsettling. The pandemic in this narrative becomes a pretext for gathering genetic data on a global scale. This concept taps into fears about hidden agendas and the potential misuse of public health crises for surveillance purposes. It's a powerful narrative device that resonates with contemporary anxieties. Imagine a CIA-run AI designed to search for specific genetic markers, like the so-called God gene or resistance gene. This algorithm could be used to identify and eliminate dissenters, turning genetic data into a tool of political control. The moment the protagonist realizes that every routine blood test since 2020 has been a registration into the Antichrist letter is a chilling revelation. In this world, Big Brother isn't just watching, he's inside your very cell. Classic image of Big Brother as a camera on a street corner has evolved. In this new reality, surveillance penetrates to the cellular level. DNA databases, AI algorithms, and government agencies work together to monitor, predict, and control behavior. The loss of privacy is no longer just about what you do, but who you are at the most fundamental level. This is the new frontier of surveillance, and it's already here. Speculative narratives take the story even further, suggesting that mRNA vaccine technology was a phase I trial for gathering data from the human genome. In this version, the vaccine becomes the mark of the beast, a biochemical interface that requires the soul's consent to fully synchronize with the system. This cosmic-level conspiracy raises the stakes, turning a biological procedure into a spiritual test. This techno-theological narrative, the protagonists are hidden in plain sight. They appear compliant and tagged on every government monitor, but internally remain free and disconnected from the beast's control. This invisible resistance trope adds a layer of spiritual warfare to the story, drawing on biblical themes and the enduring power of faith. The battle is no longer just for privacy, but for the soul itself. One of the most creative elements in this narrative is the divine firewall. Here, grace is imagined as a literal frequency or biological shield that prevents the mRNA instructions from rewriting the host's genetic code. The beast system believes it can trigger a death signal via 6G or satellite, but finds that a percentage of the population is mysteriously immune. The mark never successfully bonds, and the faithful are protected by force science cannot explain. Beast System's ultimate weapon, a pushbutton command to eliminate the disobedient, fails spectacularly. The system is baffled as a segment of the population remains unaffected by the death signal. Scientists search for a genetic mutation, but the real answer lies in the spiritual realm. This failure marks a turning point in the story, exposing the limits of technological control and the enduring power of faith. Trial wasn't just about data, it was a test to see who would trade their sovereignty for safety. This mirrors the biblical warnings in Revelation, where the mark of the beast is both a physical and spiritual challenge. As the deception is unveiled, the faithful realize they are already victorious. The narrative shifts from fear to boldness as the protagonists embrace their true identity and purpose. A stunning twist, the very technology designed to enslave the population becomes the mechanism for their recognition. The mark, intended as a silent tether, misfires into a faint bioluminescent glow, a literal halo visible only under certain spectrums or to those with spiritual sight. This inversion of art and science bridges ancient iconography with futuristic biotech, creating a powerful symbol of divine protection. Instead of facilitating the death signal, the broken mark manifests as a shield. Much like the blood of the lamb in biblical stories, this mark identifies the faithful to the Lord's angels while blinding the beast's surveillance. The system's greatest weapon becomes its greatest weakness, as the faithful are set apart and protected in ways the enemy cannot comprehend. Characters in the story begin to realize that the halos depicted in Renaissance art weren't just metaphors but prophetic blueprints. The faithful, marked by their refusal to submit, become visible to one another in ways the enemy cannot detect. This revelation turns the Antichrist into a victim of his own hubris, as his all-powerful system accidentally creates a visible army of saints. Halos or auras exist outside the electromagnetic spectrum. Computers and scientific instruments are blind to them, ensuring that the beast's trillion-dollar AI is powerless against the true state of humanity. This creates a profound intelligence gap, as the system sees compliant DNA profiles but cannot execute its commands. The faithful must rely on spiritual discernment, not technology, to recognize one another. With eyes and cameras unable to detect the halos, the faithful are forced to operate on faith. High-tension scenes unfold as characters must trust their intuition to find allies in a world of digital deception. The hubris of the Antichrist is exposed as he doubles down on physical surveillance, never realizing that the real war is being fought in a dimension he cannot even define. The ability to see auras in darkness or when exhausted adds a layer of biological realism to the supernatural premise. The Perkinj effect, a real phenomenon where the human eye shifts sensitivity in low light, becomes a gateway to spiritual truth. In the story, this physical vulnerability is transformed into a strength, allowing the faithful to see what the all-seeing AI cannot. In a nod to the early church, the faithful use the ichthys or fish symbol as a secret sign. In dimly lit alleys, characters draw the fish in the dirt, waiting for their eyes to adjust and see the faint glow of the aura. The FBI and CIA, watching through cameras, dismiss these symbols as meaningless graffiti, never realizing they are the coordinates for a massive, undetectable army. In response to the growing resistance, the Beast system implements the Highlight Protocol, keeping cities in perpetual artificial daylight. The goal is to prevent the faithful from ever letting their eyes adjust to the darkness where auras are visible. This turns the simple act of resting and praying in the dark into a revolutionary act of intelligence gathering. Dramatic turning point occurs when the faithful realize that once they see the aura, they can never unsee it, even in bright light. This mirrors the theological doctrine of eternal security, where the seal of the Holy Spirit cannot be broken by any earthly power. The transition from a faint glimmer in the dark to sea of flaming auras marks the beginning of a great awakening. Story builds to a massive gathering in Jerusalem, where millions of faithful assemble. The Beast's satellites and live maps show nothing but dots on a screen, but for the witnesses and the faithful, the landscape is a field of suns. The arrival of the two witnesses, as described in Revelation, triggers a shift that makes the auras visible to all, forcing the Beast to confront the army he accidentally created. A climactic scene, the two witnesses step onto the stage, wielding power over the elements. Their presence triggers the ignition of millions of auras into flaming light, creating a spectacle that no technology can ignore. The Beast's attempt to activate the death signal is thwarted by the combined power of the faithful, who act as a divine EMP, short-circuiting every piece of surveillance tech in the region. The moment the faithful can never unsee the auras represents the final collapse of the Great Deception. The paranoia and fear of the early chapters are replaced by absolute boldness, as the protagonists realize they are already victorious. The enemy's digital infrastructure is powerless against the reality of spiritual truth, and the faithful step into their destiny with confidence. Inside the Beast system, chaos reigns. Scientists and engineers scramble to explain why their commands are failing. They search for genetic mutations, software bugs, anything that could account for the system's blindness. But the answer remains elusive, hidden in a dimension they cannot access. The hubris of relying solely on technology is laid bare as the real war is fought on spiritual ground. With technology unable to detect the truth, the faithful must rely on spiritual intuition to find one another. Scenes of quiet trust and discernment replace the frantic pace of digital surveillance. The community grows stronger, bound by faith rather than fear. In this world, the greatest acts of resistance are often the simplest: a handshake, a prayer, a moment of silent recognition. Beast System's obsession with physical surveillance becomes its undoing. By focusing on what can be measured and controlled, the enemy misses the most important reality of all. The faithful operate in a realm beyond the reach of cameras and algorithms, turning the enemy's greatest strength into a fatal weakness. The story becomes a meditation on the limits of technology and the enduring power of the human spirit. As the story reaches its climax, the Great Awakening sweeps across the land. The faithful, once hidden and afraid, now stand boldly in the light. The auras, once faint and invisible, blaze like suns for all to see. The Beast's power is broken and a new era begins. This moment of collective revelation marks the triumph of faith over fear, spirit over technology. The ability to see the truth, even when technology cannot, becomes the defining gift of the faithful. This spiritual sight is not just a metaphor, but a literal power that shapes the outcome of the story. The faithful are united by their shared vision, able to recognize one another and act with confidence. The enemy's blindness is complete, and the faithful move forward with purpose. With the collapse of the Beast system, a new community emerges. The faithful, once scattered and isolated, come together in unity. Their shared experiences and spiritual insight form the foundation of a new society, one built on trust, compassion, and resilience. The story ends on a note of hope as the characters look to the future with renewed faith and determination. Story of the DNA Dragnet is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked surveillance and the importance of protecting personal privacy. It reminds us that technology, no matter how advanced, can never replace the human spirit. As we move into an uncertain future, the lessons of this narrative urge us to remain vigilant, value our autonomy, and never lose sight of what truly matters. In the end, the enduring power of faith triumphs over fear and control. The faithful, guided by spiritual sight and united in purpose, overcome the greatest challenges technology can throw at them. Their story is a testament to the resilience of the human soul and the unbreakable bond between truth and freedom. As the light of the auras shines across the land, a new chapter begins, one defined not by surveillance but by hope.